gift in Wendy. So thanks for having me. I'm totally excited to talk to you for a bit about my journey as an entrepreneur, which I feel that every entrepreneur, at least for me, it took a lot of moxie and a lot of empathy to get to where I am today. So that's what this will be about. I think entrepreneurs are resilient. I think we couldn't do this if we weren't relatively fearless. And it's our fearlessness that needs to be counterbalanced with empathy. Because I think we can charge forward into anywhere, anything. But if we don't read the signs and learn to listen through empathy, we can fail. And so I want to start with my personal story a little bit. I was born into an economically and emotionally starved environment. This environment came with everything that comes in a situation like that, the neglect, the abuse. I spent a lot of my life just wanting the attention of my mother. So it was a bit of an emotional cocktail. She was an alcoholic, bipolar, and a narcissist. And I didn't really understand it back then. We had a lot of transients in our home who had greater needs from my mother than I did. You know, women had slit their wrists or been stabbed with ice picks. And, you know, they deserved my mom's attention, you know, kind of more than I did. They needed her more than I did. So a lot of my life was trying to get attention from her. And this is one of the few photos I have of myself that she did take of me as a small child. Those are my jammies in the top right corner. But I love this picture. It's one of the few I have. Because this was a really early sign that I was a storyteller. I would grab things from around the house and assemble them and tell a story. So if I could get anyone to sit and listen to me, I would tell a story. Now granted, I didn't talk till I was 4 years old. Once I started to talk, I didn't stop, but this is me telling a story to my little sister. So you could say it's my very first PowerPoint file. I have a green background. I imported objects onto it, and I would move them around and tell stories. And then my mom did leave when I was 16. We came home from church. There was a note saying, "Go get the car at the Jackson Airport. I have moved to California." And for me, that was like a vast hole blown into my soul. I didn't know what to do with it. And maybe it was my entrepreneurial nature. I was third from the oldest, and I just started to take over the household. I just started to, you know, fold the socks, wash them, do the grocery shopping, make sure everyone knew what the schedules were. I just kind of became the leader / entrepreneur in my own home. And so I did get to go to a year of college. I went to the University of Southern Mississippi for a year. If you're unfamiliar with Hattiesburg, Mississippi, this is where Tiger Woods had his sex rehabilitation. So I was there for a year, and my dirty little secret is that I got a C- in speech communication and a D in English. And now I write books in English about speech communication. So that C- is interesting because I got an A+ in the visual display of information. Now we didn't have presentation tools back then. So we had to use posters and props and do different unique things for visual aids that we don't really do anymore today. So I got an A+ in the visual display of information, but I got an F in connecting with my audience. I picked subject matter topics that had nothing to do with anything anyone in the audience would be interested in. So I got an F in empathy. I didn't know how to read people. It was never modeled for me. I didn't know how to put someone else's needs before my own. And I'm still quite a bit like that. I'll meet people, get what I need out of them, and just, you know, grab what I need and forget to make it quite a bit about them. And a lot of that is because it was never modeled for me. So when I say my mom was a narcissist, what that is I've come to a very recent revelation, I'll talk about it at the end, that means you're missing the empathy gene. And for a long time, I never treated it like a mental illness. I treated it like something was wrong with me. You know, I would pick up the cello because she played the cello, and I would say like, "Oh my God, you know, notice me, you know." And I had to realize that it was a genetic thing that she didn't have empathy. But as a woman, it was never modeled for me. It wasn't modeled in her relationships. It wasn't modeled anywhere. So I had to learn that. So I got an F in empathy in my speech communications class. Yet my entire body of work now is creating empathetic structures so that I can understand others. So after basically not being very motivated to stay in college, I did what any smart young kid does, is I got married when I was 18 to an amazing man who we are celebrating 35 years this summer. And we actually got married. He came and rescued me from Mississippi. We got married in Northern California, and and wonderful. So we had thought we would go into the ministry. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to shepherd a group of people. We wanted to pour our lives out, create community that meant love. That's what we wanted. We just wanted people that loved each other. So we moved to the Silicon Valley for him to go to Bible college, and everything changed once we got to the Valley. We did wind up starting something that created community whose value system is love, but it became our own firm. And interestingly, I did not start the company, my husband did. 1987, he moved furniture from a dying aerospace company called California Microwave. We went through a little pit and a lot of companies were shutting down. So he moved furniture all summer long and bought a little Mac Plus. The company he moved furniture from, we just moved into their building, a 35,000 square foot building, almost exactly on the 25-year anniversary of him schlepping furniture from it, which is so fun. So anyway, it's just him, his little Mac. He just has this fantasy of working from home as a freelancer, live with the kids underfoot, you know, in his underwear, like all men want to work that way. And he totally rocked it, you know. I would come home, though, after I would work my real job, 14 hours at my real job, you know, and he'd be laying on the couch reading computer manuals, you know, and I'd be like, what the heck's going on here, you know? Get off your butt, get a real job. You know, he had to learn what a computer was. So I'm at my real job working on what's called a mainframe, which I don't know if you guys even know what that is, but those are these big refrigerator-sized computers with dumb terminals attached. And he's got this little toy. And I'm coming home just like, oh my God, I was very pregnant, 9 months pregnant, just screaming at him. I'm like, dude, get yourself a real job. I gotta come home mad every day. So I went through the newspaper, I circled all the jobs, I printed out his resume, had him all ready, and all he had to do was fill out the address of where it needed to go to, you know, and I would just be screaming at him. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. This personal computer thing is stupid. It's not gonna go anywhere. Isn't this terrible? And I just kind of feel like I'm paying a price for how mean I was, you know. Anyway, he said, I'll never forget, he actually got on his knees. He said, Nancy, I know, I've had a vision. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. I know this is going to be a big deal. Would you please just read Macworld magazine? Just read it. And then come back and tell me if you don't think this is a big deal. So I read it. I'm like, hey, maybe it'll be a big deal. I don't know. If I can sell it, you can keep it. If I can't sell it, you're getting yourself a real job. And so I picked up the phone one afternoon, and we won NASA, Tandem, which is now HP, and a division of Apple in one afternoon of phone calls. And I was like, shame. That was easy. And I never went back to my real job. Since I did work him pretty hard, I was kind of the account person. I'm not a graphic designer. Wikipedia, we keep having, my marketing guys keep going up to Wikipedia because someone keeps saying that I have a degree in graphic design and a degree in math, which is hysterical because I'm double degreed, I guess. And yeah, so I'm not a graphic designer, but I'm in love with the visuals, with the visual arts, with the visual display of information, and I could represent it well. So my husband in 1993 got carpal tunnel syndrome because I worked him so hard. And, bless his heart. And so what happened was we actually won the Apple account, which was huge. And people don't realize that Apple was the very first company to hook a computer up to a projector at scale, at a conference. Because traditionally they were all 35mm slides. So I would love to say I found presentations or made this space amazing, but it really found me. We jumped in, we got the Apple account, which was fantastic. We did the Worldwide Developers Conference, all this hooked up, everything, breakout sessions, the keynotes. We did the whole event, and it was really startling and fun and exciting. 1992, Apple had a layoff. Actually, the large business market was a huge layoff. People forget that Microsoft at that point had eclipsed Apple, and they actually had a much more modern operating system, and Apple went through an identity crisis quite a bit. So in 1992, all my clients at Apple got laid off, and we laid off our first of 2 employees on a Friday. He got drunk all weekend, and then we hired him back on that day because we got work again because all my Apple clients scattered around the valley and took me with them. Because this was a new phenomenon. Desktop projectors had dropped under the $15,000 mark for a projector. It was like a craze, you know. So we're happy as clams. You know, we're building slides, building decks, having a really, really great time. And then I was like 28 years old, and I think it's that moxie part. and a sense of personal authority. I think that's what entrepreneurs have. I would just march into offices and tell people, here's what you need to say, here's what you should do. That sounds stupid, you know? And they just believe me. So I felt a bit like a poser. You know, here I am, just this kid, well-read. I gotta say, street smart. I read everything. I read all the latest books. I knew all the strategies. I knew all the marketing. I knew all the business strategy. I knew all the ways to execute. I knew everything. I read everything. I devoured everything. So sometimes I was the smartest person in the room, or at least the most opinionated, which gets you pretty far too as an entrepreneur. So I'm this little kid, but feeling a bit like a poser. Nobody asked me. They assumed I had an MBA. The whole valley is built on the backs of either MBAs or engineers. So I was a bit on the outside, but I didn't even know it. And I think that actually added to my benefit. I just show up in the valley. It's interesting because the Silicon Valley, before it was called the Silicon Valley, was called the Valley of the Heart's Delight. Because you could just go and there were rows and rows of fruit trees. You could just pick fruit from the trees. And that's what it's been for me. It's this place that's been so fruitful. And it's just let me pull things off its trees, which are ideas mostly now, instead of actual fruit. So it's been like the land of milk and honey for me in a place that I'm distinctly not qualified to thrive in. So you guys think about, there was a long time ago where presentations weren't cool. 5 years ago, if I asked you if a company called TED would win a Peabody Award for broadcasting slides, you probably would have thrown up a little bit in your mouth. Like you would have been like, what? But that's what's happening. Presentations are so powerful. The spoken word is so powerful. It's really hard to point to a movement that didn't start with some sort of an impassioned plea. And that's the beauty of it. You get people in the room, there's a collective effervescence that's irreplaceable. Like there's nothing you can do that's any more glorious than bringing the right people in the room and thriving together around the spoken word. So I knew that everything needed to be reinvented. When this landed in my lap, I could actually see. As a entrepreneur, for some reason, I'm a seer. I can see about 18 months out. I can confidently know that in 18 months I need to be here, I need to be here, I need to be here. I can actually see it pretty clearly. I mean, it's a little foggy, but pretty clearly. So we've been through several reinventions ourselves. And a reinvention, a business is like life. We're born, we live, we die. Right? So you start, you grow, you mature. And in a business, you start to go into a form of decay if you go into a steady state. You can't do that because you'll become like fallow rot. It just starts to become maintenance. And whenever it's maintenance, that's when you know you've matured and you're decaying or ultimately going into decline, which would actually ultimately mean the destruction of your firm unless you reinvent yourself. So you start up, you grow, you mature, and then if you reinvent yourself, you'll thrive. So you gotta take yourself through multiple reinventions. And I wanna talk about the ones that Duarte went through. As you know, we started as a freelance firm with my husband, and then we became a service bureau. We got lots of clients. Clients would say, hi, doll this, that. We'd say, thank you very much, like we're little Keebler elves or something, and then we would hand it back and be like, thank you very much. So we just serviced them. We had a service creed called The Show Must Go On. And we would do anything we can. I remember this one time we stayed up all night working on a slide for a guy who was the CEO of Lotus at the time, which is now IBM. And I was so wiped out, I fell asleep in my room, and the show producer calls, and I literally jump out of bed, and I just run down the bowels of the convention center, show up, I'm like curtsying, hand him the disc, we load it up, I'm like, thank you very much. And I go back to the room that we have, the little boiler room, and my team's like, oh my God, you met an executive looking like that? I had like my red nightshirt on, my bare feet, and like sheet marks across my face like that. That's how we got it. The show must go on no matter what. We will do whatever we can. So we were a service bureau, and then I hired a relatively famous creative director, and I'm like, we need to become a design firm. I don't want to just be dolling things up at the minimum. And so she brought in practices like critiquing. Let's print it out. Print it out. Let's put it on the wall. Let's talk about what worked, what didn't. I'm like, wow, so foreign. Because we were just based on service, not on necessarily the design quality. So then we actually, the dot-com crash happened. During the design phase, we'd expanded into multimedia, print, web. We became a generalist agency. Dot-com crash happened. All my print, web, multimedia went away, and the phone kept ringing for presentations. So if you think about it, even in a downturn, you need presentations, the best presentations of the arms of the sales force to run out there and shore up the business. So I can't say we're recession-proof. The phone kept ringing for presentations in the dot-com crash. At the same time, 2001, Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, came out. And in it, he says, if there's one thing you could be passionate about, be best in the world at, and be profitable at, do just that one thing. So here we are barreling, the economy's just tanking. My business dipped about 30% because all my multimedia print went away. So the economy's just crashing, and I did a super counterintuitive thing. I trimmed 3 out of 4 of our services out at the same time. We focus on the niche of presentations. Nobody had actually done that at an agency of scale. So we narrowed our niche, and then we decided, you know what, we want to become the global leader. We want the world to know that we're here, because we really felt like we were the global leader. So that was the journey. And then I knew we needed to go through a reinvention, and that's about the time I met Wendy, was for the next reinvention of Duarte. We went to India. What happened, the reason I went to India is for 2 years I'd had this piece of paper on the surface of my desk. I kept moving around, go to India. And I would just move it around, it would surface again, and I just kept this piece of paper, go to India, you need to go to India. Well, what's happening is I started to hear that like HP and McKinsey and all these people, they were sending their presentations out to India to be cleaned up. And it was super cheap. And I really felt like this was going to disrupt my business. I wanted to know what's going on here. Why is outsourcing such a big deal? Can they outsource a creative role? I just had all these questions. And then I met the same lovely lady that Wendy knew, Lakshmi, and she invited me to go to India. This was a really special group of people. But we all, I think, we were all on our own journey of the soul. And we all had this sense that we wanted to check it out because a bunch of reports had come out at the same time. And The Economist said basically that the emerging economies were going to eclipse the developed economies. And I wanted to know what that was about. I wanted to know, will I be in service of India one day? And I wanted to see if that was going to be true. So this is a group of ladies. You can see Wendy there at the top with the big grin. We all became soul sisters. It was the most phenomenal. It makes Eat, Love, Pray look like a joke, right? It's just so lovely what we went through. So we had a glorious trip. I mean, we saw pictures of gods and shrines to gods. We heard noise pollution, saw air pollution. We went to microfinance villages where the women there worked so hard just to educate their children. We saw nonprofits that feed 250,000 small children a warm meal every day. We were entertained by monkeys and by snake charmers. We rode in rickshaws and on elephants. We saw women who actually maimed their own children so that when they begged, they would get more money. We met the Minister of Industry, which was charming, except he has a big ear hair problem. So ladies, stand by your men. Don't let this happen, okay? Yeah. And then we also met the woman who became the president of the country and the governor of Rajasthan. We had met the woman who runs the stock exchange. We met the top venture capitalists there. We had high tea with the Maharaja and his wife, had a private meeting with his daughter. It was a really, really unbelievable trip. We met the people that started Call 108, which is like a 911 system. And then we actually had attended a meeting at the International School of Business. We would drive by tent cities on the way to groomed corporate campuses. It was this beautiful journey through contrast, through color, emotional, but I was on a quest. I wanted to contend with, will this place become my competitor? So I met with like agency heads, I met with different people. I really wanted to see the portfolios. Can they do the US visual aesthetic? Would this be appealing for US companies to outsource? So all that's impressive, because we also met movie stars and producers, and it was just unbelievable. And all that was impressive, but I was most moved this moment when we went to a small campus. One of the women that we were there with was one of the top venture capitalists in India, and she had put in a computer lab at this little school. And right when we walked on campus, you could hear them squealing, "They're here! They're here!" I think there was like 1,000 little girls just screaming that we were there. They waited. They were all excited to see us. And I was kind of blown back when they took us into this room, into the computer lab. There was about 20 computers along the walls, and they'd all made a PowerPoint presentation. This was the very thing I was there to see. Are these people going to replace me? Is this my future workforce? And what am I going to do about that? So when it was done, there was just this little sea of pink uniforms. And these kids wanted it. They wanted my job. Like, they wanted to do anything but mop floors in India. And these are the kids that are getting educated. They're smarter, they're quicker, they're little whips, you know. And this was a very pivotal moment for me as a business person, trying to contend with that workforce. What role was it going to play? When would it hit me? So when all was said and done, we went to dinner at the sister of the princess, and I remember thinking, I think this is the ugliest, most god-awful house I've ever seen. Like, they're beautiful there, considered so beautiful, but they had like 84 different colors in one room, and like things hanging from everywhere. And I thought, wow, there was a lot of things I saw and did where I realized what we value as beautiful is different than what they value as beautiful. So after this trip, I thought it's about 8 to 10 years away where this will actually impact my business. And I knew it would take about that long for me to be ready to contend with what they had. So this was a newspaper headline while I was there. India is poised to become the #2 economy, not second to US, second to China. That put US at third. And they thought it would happen by 2050. Then I get home and the Wall Street Journal talks about the most vulnerable jobs for outsourcing. It says 178,530 of them are graphic design positions. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, then all this validation starts to come. And then you know it's been a really crazy idea when Guy Kawasaki blogs about it. He said, I got my bio picture retouched for $2 in China. So here he is, there's his real face, and there he is all brightened up. And I was like, dang, this is really happening. Like it felt like it was at my front door. And I realized we need to change. I need to change my organization. We can't be the people that just doll things up anymore. I needed to fundamentally change what we say we do, how we say we do it. And I'm on this long journey of the soul because I had to face my own frailties, right? I knew we needed to become storytellers, but I got a D in English. I knew we had to do things differently, but I didn't feel qualified. This was the moment I felt the most unqualified and the most scared in my whole career, was at this moment where I wanted to go from somebody who just serviced people really well, made their stuff look great, to someone who was going to start to control what came out of the mouths of my clients, and it was terrifying. So what I did is we decided we need to become storytellers, and that was the big reinvention where that trip to India was such a pivot point for me. Because of the power of the spoken word, I had so much respect for it. You know, I just had so much respect for its power that I actually felt like terrified. And then at the same time, a guy named John Patel, who you guys are partnering with soon, he said agencies need to become publishers and publishers need to become agencies. And I was like, dang, that's true. You know those moments where it's like, it just rings inside of you is true. So I was like, I need to fashion my agency into publishers. I want to be a publisher of content. Now, that sounds like, yeah, but we're talking 2007. Like, this is when Google was just out, kind of thing. It's been there for a year. So this was like a big thing back then. So I published my first book, Slidology. And this book is much more simple. You can actually see through my work, especially from the next one, how much stronger I got. It's almost like you get to watch me develop as a student. So this one was easy for me because I got to use very descriptive language to talk about design. If you guys are familiar with John Maida, who was the president of RISD, and he serves on the board at Kleiner now, he said he likes to give this book away because it put design into business language, and it made a business case for why design is important to companies, and why companies that value design perform 4 times more return to shareholders if they invest in value design. So it's really, and it was kind of easy for me because it was almost like an anthology of what we've currently been doing. I was kind of reporting about what the firm currently does. So the big surprise for me, which Wendy has been holding my hand as I walk along this new journey, was the phone started to ring for training when this book came out. And I was kind of like, I'm a capitalist, I could do training too. And so we built a training organization. Well, that's a completely different model than an agency model. Completely different, I needed a different structure. And that's where Wendy's just completely came alongside me and walked me through and became an advisor on my advisory board. Well, that's amazing. The training organization is completely profitable, which is nice. And then that's when I started to go on the journey through the spoken word. I really wanted to talk about storytelling, and I felt like I got my chops through Slidology. So then I started to study the greatest speakers, the ones who had really changed the world the most through what they said.
through memorable things that have become part of our history. They've gotten embedded in our folklore, and I wanted to know, what did they say, why did they say it, how did they say it? So as a CEO running a company with two distinct business models, I'm getting one thriving and gestating a new one, the training business. I decided to write my next book around storytelling specifically, because now I feel like I'm ready. I've become a writer. As an entrepreneur, if you're really committed, this meant I got up at 4 a.m. I wrote from 4 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then I did my real job from 11 a.m. To 7 p.m. Now I was an empty nester, and that's what I think gave me kind of the bandwidth to write my first book. Was my son had gone away to a little boarding school. He's actually a gifted music prodigy, so anyway, that's a whole other story if you want to pick my brain about that. But anyway, I got to write Slideology, and then I dove into Resonate, and becoming a student of story completely changed my life. When you understand story structures, you understand a coping mechanism for life. Because the basic story structure is this really likable person who goes through terrible hardships to hell and back, and it changes them. So I realized that that's what my life had been. It was like I was made for such a time as story. I was made to be a storyteller because of everything that I'd been through. It's when someone has a boring life, they're not a great cocktail party guest. It's when they've really, gone through it that it makes a great story. So I spent 2 years just studying story, Eastern story structures, Western story structures, really understanding why they work. Why is it that when you're a presenter talking, it's boring, but then you're a storyteller and everyone's heart is racing? Why is that? Just because you put slides between you and the audience, everything becomes totally boring. And I knew there would be a way to find that answer through storytelling. And that's when I wrote Resonate. That felt like a dissertation in rhetoric, writing this book. It was fun, it was hard, it was like a puzzle. It just kept me up at night till I could actually see the structure. And I'll walk you through just one example from the book. If you see my TED Talk, this is an example, but it's also, the whole thing is going to be an example of the impact that thought leadership has had on my business. So if you're not a thought leader and you're not a creator of content, a creator of new insights, I strongly urge you to go and become that because it's dramatically impacted my business. So then in 2011, I did a TEDx talk. And then when it hit about 50,000 views, I was so pleased, I tweeted it. It had been like 6 months. It hit 50,000 views on YouTube. And I tweeted it and I copied Ted, who is a client, but still I didn't think they looked at my Twitter feed. And then they picked it up, put it on TED.com. It had like 1.2 million views, and then Ted did something to their thing. It dropped to 500,000 views, which was so sad for me. So I think we're creeping up. I don't know, I may have hit 1 million views over the last couple of weeks. So that completely rocked my business, and I'll show you the impact. I'll show you an excerpt from the talk. That's an excerpt from the book. And it's how Steve Jobs used story patterns in his talk. So the big thing that I found in Resonate, that's the power of a story, is that you build tension and it releases. You get this cathartic release when you're telling a story. So I thought, gosh, these speeches have this rhythm, a pulse, a cadence to them, that I thought they're building tension and releasing it, but I wanted to figure out why or how they're doing that. And so I made a discovery that basically the structure of the greatest speeches moves between what is, what could be, and then structurally it moves back to what is, what could be. What's happening is they're saying, hey, here's the current state, here's what's going on, here's the state of the union, here's the elephant in the room, but look, here's what could be. So it's like anticipating a better future. It's saying, but look, if we all move this direction, this could be our reality in the future. So that's what happens. It moves back and forth between what is, what could be, and then the ending ends with the new bliss. So I'm going to walk through how Steve Jobs' talk, his 2007 iPhone launch speech, actually follows that pattern. So he gave a 90-minute talk, which don't ever do that unless you're Steve Jobs. But I'll show you the reason why. He could keep an audience enthralled for 90 minutes. I'm going to zoom in. So obviously he would speak. He would cut to video. So that's another form of contrast. He would not just be him doing one-directional diatribes. He mixed up the media. And then he also would cut to demos. And his demos always involved humans. It would be like, oh, look, I have a visual voice in mail from Al Gore. And he would go, or let's call up Starbucks and order 4,000 lattes for you. Well, how come someone at Starbucks answered the phone? And, that was all planned. So if you have software or you do demos, how fun it would be to use a literary figure in your demos that makes people go, my God, that was so clever. And I just love that literary figure from Les Mis, or that'd be a terrible one to use, but you can do things that pull the human nature and storytelling into everything you do. And then he brought up guest speakers in blue, which I'll scoot across and show you in a second. But this, for me, was the most profound insight. This is why Mr. Jobs could keep them enthralled for 90 minutes. Every one of these vertical tick marks is where the audience laughed, and every one of these vertical tick marks is where they clapped. Now, the phenomenal thing about storytelling is that we do physically react. You laugh, you clap, you cry, you lean forward, you jump back, you get a chill down your spine. People don't even realize that your eyes dilate when you're hearing something that delights you. So the fact that they laughed and clapped, that's a lot of physical reaction while he's speaking. And that's actually unparalleled at this point in time. I haven't been able to find anybody that does it like that. So he enters into what could be by saying, this is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years. So he's known about the phone for a long time, yet he's acting like he's seeing it for the first time, like it's this maddening love affair he has with this device. Because this next tick mark is interesting. This is where Mr. Jobs marveled at his own product. So he'd already seen it forever, and he's like, isn't it great? It's so beautiful. Like he's just doing these exclamatory, boisterous little bursts of affection for his own product. I think that's half the battle, is being in love with what we do, being in love with what we sell, and just really loving it. Just really loving it and letting it show. So he kicks off the announcement saying every once in a while a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. Now, you may not realize how much the phone changed everything because there's a lot of young people there. But he introduced the phone, and you can see that the line stays white till right about there. Now, it's white because he's showing photos of the phone. He's just saying, oh, and there's this little hole here, and this button, and there's a switch, and then they're just slides where he's showing the hardware. Right here, he goes into a demo, and he created what we call a STAR moment. And STAR is an acronym for something they'll always remember. This was where Mr. Jobs turned the phone on. The audience saw scrolling for the first time, and you could hear them gasp. You can hear the gasp in the audience because they knew he had made a revolutionary product that would change everything. So then you scoot across, you'll see the two batches of blue at the top. One is the Yahoo CEO, one's the Google CEO. This long batch of blue right here is the AT&T CEO. Now, he took way too long. He read off the 4x6 cards. There's no laughing, no clapping, no marveling the whole time. And then I put a little break in the line because there was a technical malfunction when they turned the clicker over to Mr. Jobs. They handed it back. So what do you think one of the greatest business communicator does is he tells a personal story where he and Steve Wozniak created technical malfunctions on the Berkeley campus when they did television jamming. And then it returns to him. He states the new bliss, and he uses a quote. He says, there's an old Wayne Gretzky quote that I love. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where it's been. We've always tried to do that at Apple since the very, very beginning, and we always will. That was his new bliss. He's promising them we will continue to create revolutionary products in the future. And then they had a John Mayer concert. Back then, that was really cool. Yeah. So this is interesting. I thought I would just show you an overview. 1992, like I said, that was an economic downturn. You can see we kind of go in cycles. Some of them are in the valley. This was specifically kind of valley-centric. But you can see we grew. We grew because the scattering of my apple plants. They were like glorious seeds that spread across the valley. 2001, we took a hit from the .com, and I swore to myself I didn't ever want to be unprepared for that again. But that's when we became, you can see it rises, we did the presentation niche. I had this burning thing inside of me. I told everyone, I'm like, I don't know why, but Slidology has to be out by my son's birthday, September 3rd, 2008. I had 4 publishers look at the book. Then I went with the publisher that promised me it would be on shelves. September 3rd was like a fire. Like when you're an entrepreneur, you get these fires in your belly. You know that you know that you know that you know. And I'm like, I'm only going to go with a publisher that can do that. September 2008 was the downturn, the big hit. So you can see 2008, 9 stood flat. Flat was the new grow back then. I was very pleased. Yeah, we stayed flat. And then you can see Resonate came out 2010. My TED Talk came out 11, the first viewing, 2012. It freaking exploded. This was unbearable. It almost broke my firm. Just piles puzzle work on. And when you get to a certain scale, there's the thing called the Dunbar number at about 100 people, which basically is a number that says when you get to about 100 people, the community starts to naturally want to divide, you know, and it becomes siloed. So we're in the process right now. We just did another reinvention where we're just getting ready to scale and retain our community. So then I was asked to write the Harvard Business Review Guide, which was hard for me. Like, that was just like, what? Tips and tricks? They wanted tips and tricks. I'm like, but you can't, like, they're like, we just want the book. Like, oh, hi, I broke my leg. Will you present in my stead? They wanted a book where the boss could be like, hey, and this would be the book you pull off the shelf if your boss broke their leg. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's not very transformative, but I'll do it. What was interesting about this book, and that wound up being such a huge blessing, is we use it as a script. Always retain the rights. If you ever want to talk about rights and stuff like that, just come and see me, because if you're an IP generator and someone publishes your book, there's a certain finite set of stuff that you need to keep so you can make bank off of it. So this was one of them. I retained all the multimedia rights, all the derivative rights, and we turned it into an e-course. And the e-course is interesting. So everything I make then actually can produce some sort of revenue. I don't just write a book just to write a book. This isn't being recorded, so my fans think I write books for them, okay? And I do mostly. But it does generate revenue. So this was an e-course. My assignment for this was that, basically in an e-course, audio trumps visuals, that people will tune out. They'll take the course because their boss said, and they'll really do their email. They're just checked out doing their email. So I was like, I want you guys to make this better than an old-time radio show. So they took the script, completely added all kinds of voices and video, and there's humorous little cookies and treasures in there that are hysterical. So I've been experimenting with publishing, if it's true. We've been giving away books for free, trying to see the value of, if I give away a book for free, what's the value in collecting names so I can market to them. I gave away a book about PowerPoint in PowerPoint, and we collected 80,000 names, which was unbelievable. And then this new book that I'm doing right now, again, is another model. So the presentation form that's in Resonate was a way for me to have a structure in my head so that I could resonate. Like, that's the part that was missing, is I couldn't see what you would need to hear from me and then connect there. And then this next one is another model for empathy. And that was when I had this personal revelation that so much of what was driving me as an entrepreneur, so much of how I measured my success, was in wanting to feel some empathy from my own mom. And this new book is a structure of empathy. So I would say I'm an empathy architect, maybe, because I can't naturally sense what you're feeling. And so I had to actually decide, what is it that makes me successful? Because I realized so much of it, I just wanted my mom to say, I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you, I'm so pleased. I love you. Like, that's all I ever wanted to hear. And that drove me. Maybe if I grow the business this big, you know, she'll notice me, or maybe if I do that. And I had to actually come up with my own definition of success. I had to break from that. I had to accept that I may never hear that. I may never feel that. And I had to be satisfied with myself and my own success and not let those other things drive me anymore. So even though I've reached success, I think I've won so many of the little chick awards they have around the Bay Area, and other non-chick awards, which are nice too. My firm is just thriving, it's big, and it's doing great. But like I said, I had to come up with a different way to define success. So I'm running around the valley with this big hole in my soul, not having a degree, posing, faking it. And then Cisco paid for me to get my MBA from UCLA, my client did. And it was super easy. I got an MBA, they gave me all kinds of credit for my work, and then suddenly that little hole in my soul was closed too. So then I had to contend with, you know, the bigger part of me that was empty. I needed to embrace my story. I needed to be fine with it. I needed to say, this is what made me fight so hard. This is what's made me different. This is what makes me strong. So many people can go through some of the same things, and we either emerge a victim or victorious. And I always had that fight. I always had that, I'm not going to let this shape who I am moment. And then this February 14th, one of the most remarkable things happened as my mom has started to now get dementia. She left me a voicemail.
Well, Nancy, this is your mama, and I'm just calling to wish you a very happy Valentine's Day. You've been a good Valentine in my life all these years. Ever since you were born, you've really been special to me. I hope you have a splendid day. I'll talk to you in another time. Bye-bye.
Everything I wanted her to say, she just said to me. I didn't even know what to do, like I saved it. I had my husband go load up software so I could pull that off, so that I could listen to it over and over and over. It's amazing what we go through. Like when I let it go was when I heard the very thing I had been longing my entire life to hear. So I just want to implore you guys to fight hard and fight well. Being an entrepreneur, being in the creative space, it's not easy, but it's the most rewarding thing we can do if you have fight, if you have moxie, and if you have empathy. And I wish you guys all the success in the whole wide world here.